Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I open my eyes to the single look I can't bear, the look in the mirror that's staring back at me from across the room. I don't recognize that face, contorted in some silent scream. My mouth is open, but there's no sound. I'm alone here, in the echo of a hollow house, and it's raining outside. I hear the downpour slamming against the roof, trickling down the gutters. The windows rattle with each gust of wind. The air feels thick with something impossible to name. My throat burns as if I've been yelling, but I don't recall a single shout. And yet there's this shape in the mirror, eyes wide in horror, lips pulled back tight. I want to run from that gaze, but I'm stuck where I stand, my feet cold on the wooden floor. It takes a moment to realize the reflection is mine. I close my eyes. The drumming rain grows louder. My heart throbs in time with it, or maybe out of sync. I can't tell. I feel the pulse in my ears and the dryness in my mouth. There's a faint echo of memory. The day I gave her a gift for our son's first birthday. How I stood there like a fool while she brushed me off, phone in hand. I'd caught a glimpse of the screen. Coach ran. She'd said it was no big deal. And I believed her at first. Or maybe I didn't. I just wanted to. I remember the acrid smell of sweat clinging to her, sweat that didn't belong to me. It made my stomach turn then. It makes it twist into knots now. Rain pours so hard it's like someone's dumped an ocean onto our rooftop. I see the reflection flinch. I realize I'm trembling, my hands in tight fists. My hair is damp, either from the humidity or the fact I haven't showered in a day. I stand in the center of what used to be our living room. The furniture's gone. I sold some of it, left most behind. I didn't bother taking anything large except a few boxes and my clothes. The place is empty. A shell. Maybe that's fitting, since I feel like an empty shell myself. I take a step toward the mirror. My foot drags across a dent in the floor. I remember that dent. We got it during our first year here, when I dropped a lamp while we were moving in. She laughed so hard then, saying we were hopeless but cute, that we'd figure it out. It was such an ordinary moment, yet it felt like a promise that we'd be together in our clumsy chaos, growing, building a life. And I believed it. I press my palm against the mirror, half expecting the reflection to shift or break. It remains the same, a haunted man with stubble on his chin and tired lines around his eyes. My reflection is me, and I can't escape it. I open my mouth to speak, but no words come, only a crackling breath. I'm not sure if I should laugh or cry. The truth is, I don't know how to cry. Not anymore. Then I remember I have to go. There's one last thing I need to do here. I rake my fingers through my hair and walk away from the mirror. Step by step, I pass through the hallway. The walls seem to close in on me. Photographs used to hang here. Pictures of me and Lauren on vacations. Pictures with our boy. The nails are still in place, empty. It's like the house itself is stripped of its story, just as I'm stripped of who I thought I was. I push open the bedroom door. I see the outlines where the bed used to be, a square of lighter carpet among darker threads. The curtains flutter from the draft. The windows cracked open, letting in the wet smell of storm. My duffel bag sits near the door. I stuffed a few pairs of jeans, some shirts, shoes, and not much else. I bend down and slip on my old jacket. The left sleeve is frayed. Where I pressed my ear to the crack of the bathroom door and heard her hushed voice, giggling softly. Where I once tried to question her. "Lauren, what's going on? Are you seeing someone else?" She responded with empty laughter, like my concerns were ridiculous. Then she got angry, spitting out words that made me feel small. "You're just paranoid," she'd say. "Stop imagining things. Or worse, you're not yourself anymore." And I believed that it might be in my head. For a while, I truly did. A rush of memories hits me, as if the storm's broken through my skull. But I can't stand here, rummaging through the wreckage. I've done that enough. My steps echo in the corridor as I head for the front door. The smell of the rain is stronger. I see a flicker of lightning through the small window above the entrance. Suddenly, I'm back in that night, the night I stood outside the gym, waiting for her to come out. I should have never followed her, but a man does strange things when suspicion clutches his heart like a claw. It was drizzling, not as heavy as tonight, but enough to soak my jacket. I watched from across the lot, the hood of my truck pulled over my face. I felt ridiculous, but something in me just wouldn't let it go. I needed proof. She had told me she was going to the gym. It made me uneasy. Lauren had never been that obsessive about working out, but she started after giving birth, said she needed to get back in shape, said she was meeting a personal trainer. She mentioned the name Ryan once. Just a coach, she told me. So I waited. The neon sign buzzed overhead. People came and went. I spotted him first, a tall, muscular guy in a black hoodie, shoulders broad as a doorway. He was leaning against a pillar, checking his phone. Then I saw Lauren. Her hair was pulled into a high ponytail, wearing tight leggings, a fitted top. She looked good, I won't deny that. She always did. That's when I noticed how casually she approached him, how comfortable she seemed in his presence. A wave of nausea hit me, but I pressed it down. For a moment, they chatted by the pillar. She laughed at something he said, placing her hand lightly on his forearm. It wasn't a friendly pat. It felt more intimate. He touched her waist, just a moment, but it was enough. Even from that distance, I could see the spark in their eyes. My heart hammered in my chest. I thought, stay calm. Maybe it's just an over-friendly gesture. Then they moved together. Close. I saw her lips meet his. It was no brief peck. It was slow, deliberate, the kind you give someone when you think no one else is watching. My knees almost gave out. I was too far to hear, but I imagined the wet smack of lips, the muffled moan. My breath caught in my throat. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. All my suspicions laid bare in front of me, drenched in fluorescent parking lot lights. They broke apart, and she glanced around. Her expression was half thrilled, half guilty. He grinned at her like a man who knew exactly what he was doing. My chest felt tight, as if someone jammed a fist between my ribs. I wanted to roar, to run across the lot, and tear them apart. But I froze. A swirling mixture of rage, shame, heartbreak. God, it was unbearable. I wanted to unsee what I'd seen, to cram the images back into oblivion. But there they were, etched permanently in my mind. A car passed, splashing water onto the curb. They stepped apart, perhaps to appear discreet. She wiped her mouth, smiled at him. He slid an arm around her shoulders as they headed for his pickup. My lungs expanded with a sudden rush, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. She got into his truck. They disappeared. And I stood there, my hair dripping, clothes plastered to my skin, feeling like a ghost. That's when I whispered something, maybe the first words that came out in hours. I knew it. I returned home that night and found the baby asleep in his crib. I remember standing over his little body, listening to the soft snores. My heart clenched. My boy, with his tiny hands and miniature eyelashes. He needed a mother. He needed a father. But what did he have now? A father who couldn't be sure which way was up. A mother who sneaked off to meet her trainer for more than exercise. I felt helpless. I might have whispered the same words. I knew it. I knew it. When she came home, she acted like nothing was wrong. She smelled of shampoo, fresh from a quick shower, but the tang of men's cologne lingered. His cologne, not mine. I didn't speak. I must have looked like a statue in the hallway. She paused, gave me a perfunctory glance. If she suspected that I knew, she didn't show it. She said, "You're still up," as though that was abnormal. I didn't respond, just stared. She shrugged and disappeared into the bedroom. Every nerve in my body wanted to scream. Instead, I let the silence swallow me. The next weeks were a blur. I tried to confront her again. "Lauren," I'd say, "please. I know something's going on. Just tell me." She laughed, short and dismissive. "Don't start with this again. Or you're imagining things. Or the worst. Stop whining. You're pathetic." I didn't recognize that tone. Where was my wife? The woman who used to lie on my shoulder, telling me about her dreams. Now she was a stranger, ice cold, foam clutched to her side. Something in me began to die, piece by piece. In that slow unraveling, I'd go to the bathroom mirror to speak to myself. Sometimes I even kissed the mirror, mocking the lie I was forced to live. It was better than chasing her, trying to wrest truth from eyes that refused to see me. My job started to slip. I couldn't focus. I'd stare at spreadsheets, shipments, deadlines, and my mind would drift to the image of her lips on his. The anger would flare, then crash into a wave of despair. I'd come home hoping for some sign, an apology, an explanation. All I got was distance, or short, cruel remarks. I remember one evening she found me in the kitchen, sitting in the dark. She said, "We need groceries," like that was the only thing that mattered. I swallowed a million questions, spat out nothing. Then our son turned one. I was the only one who seemed to care. I came home with a gift. A little wagon, shiny red. I pictured him giggling, crawling inside it, letting me pull him around the backyard. Lauren was by the window, phone in hand. She glanced at the box, sighed, and said, "It's no big deal. He won't even remember this birthday." I wanted to shake her, to snap her out of whatever haze she was in. Instead, I just stood there, gift in hand, heart pounding. A text notification lit up her phone. Coach ran. She tucked it behind her back, as if I wouldn't notice. My face burned with humiliation. She walked past me as if I were an inconvenience. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth would shatter. In that moment, I felt something break inside. I tried to question her again, but the words stuck. She brushed me off with that same stinging laughter. "Don't start," she said. "You're weird lately." I realized she was controlling the narrative. I was the one who had changed, apparently, not her. As if her secret rendezvous and scorching betrayal were all in my mind, I swallowed my bitterness. The boy watched us from the playmat, oblivious. So small, so innocent, so undeserving of a mother's indifference. I put the wagon in the corner of the living room. She left the house, muttering something about a business meeting. I stared at the empty space where she'd been, feeling more alone than ever. That's when the anger turned into something else. A sense of absolute emptiness. Like every emotion was drained from my chest. I couldn't cry or shout. I just existed in this raw, hollow state. An emotional vacuum. My only anchor was my son. But soon, even that anchor felt uncertain. She started coming home late, or not at all. She'd crash in a different bedroom, or vanish before sunrise. I tried to keep it together, for the baby's sake, but I was unraveling fast. One evening, I did the unthinkable. I followed her again. She told me she was going to a late business function. I knew it was a lie. I trailed her car from a distance, heart pounding. Headlights off so she wouldn't spot me. She pulled into a parking lot behind a closed store. It was deserted except for a single truck and a faint street lamp. My stomach lurched. I watched from a distance, hidden in shadows, as she got into that truck with him. They were in the front seat at first, talking, maybe laughing. Then I saw their silhouettes move closer. My throat tightened. I saw her arms slip around his neck, her hair falling forward. He leaned in, even from far away. I could sense the intimacy. It killed me. The windows fogged up. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I forced myself not to rush over there and tear the door open. What would that accomplish besides more humiliation? I lost track of time. Might have been 10 minutes. Might have been half an hour. Eventually, she climbed out of the truck, smoothing her hair, adjusting her clothes. He stepped out too, ran a hand through his short-cropped hair, then kissed her again. This was no fleeting affair or drunken mistake. This was routine. A vile, repeated betrayal. My stomach heaved. I leaned against my seat, trying not to puke. The taste of acid filled my mouth. I whispered, "I'm done." That night, I waited for her at home. She showed up an hour later, feigning exhaustion. I confronted her, more direct than ever. "I saw you," I said quietly. She blinked, almost flinched. "What?" she hissed, playing dumb. "The parking lot," I murmured. "His truck. You. Do I need to say more?" The color drained from her face. Then she put on a sneer. "Why are you spying on me?" "You're crazy," she snapped, her voice shaking. She tried to flip it back on me. "This is psycho behavior." I repeated the same line, over and over, calm and steady. "I saw you. I saw you." It was like each repetition chipped away at her act. "Stop it," she shouted. "Shut up. Just shut up." Her eyes burned with something between fury and shame. I took a step closer, holding her gaze. "I saw you," I said for the final time, no louder than a whisper. She shoved past me, spitting curses, tears in her eyes. I didn't follow. The numbness returned, wrapping me like a tight blanket. My heart hammered, but I felt strangely in control. That was the moment I realized we were done. In the days that followed, I started packing. I took only my essentials. I wrestled with the idea of taking my son. But I had nowhere to go yet, nowhere stable. I wasn't sure how I'd manage with my work schedule. So I made the hardest choice. I left him in the house. That's not to say I abandoned him. I planned to fight for custody. But at that moment, I couldn't handle the chaos. I'd do him no good homeless or living out of a suitcase. With each box I sealed, I felt another chain snap inside me. My father taught me a man's gotta protect what's his. But how do you protect your child from a mother's deception, from a father's anguish? The best I could do was step away, gather strength, and come back to claim him properly. Finally, the day arrived. Rain hammered the windows. She was off somewhere. I didn't even care. I'd written a letter, the only explanation I felt she deserved. I placed it on the kitchen table, weighed down by a broken photo frame. The glass had cracked, but you could still see our wedding photo inside, smiling faces from a different life. I wrote, "If you're reading this, I'm gone. The man you knew is gone too. You destroyed us, but I will rebuild myself from every fracture. Don't look for me." Then I turned my back on the house. The last thing I did was stand by my son's room. He was with her parents for the weekend, so the crib was empty. The mobile above the mattress was still. I felt a longing so sharp it hurt, but I knew I had to follow through. Trying to force a broken marriage to hold together with duct tape was no answer. Besides, she was too far gone, lost in her fling with that muscle-bound trainer. Her betrayal had hollowed us out from within. I walked into the living room, the place where we'd once put up a Christmas tree, the place where the wagon still gathered dust. I pressed a hand to the wall, felt the cold drywall under my fingertips. Then I left. I pulled the front door shut behind me and stepped into the storm, letting the rain soak every inch of me. Let it wash away what was left of my illusions. That was the night I found myself in a cheap motel, listening to the pitter-patter of raindrops on the metal roof. My hair dripped onto the scratched wooden table where I set down my truck keys. My shirt clung to my chest. I stared at the blank television screen. The silence was thick. My mind was a roaring storm. Emotions clashed. Anger, hurt, shame, a stinging sense of failure. But at least there was also a sliver of relief. She couldn't hurt me anymore if I removed myself from her reach. Time dragged. A day turned into a week into two. I found a small rental apartment not far from my workplace. The landlord didn't mind that I had minimal furniture. I slept on an air mattress, used a folding chair as my living room set. My coworkers noticed I'd changed. I was quieter, stared off into space. My boss asked if I was all right. I shrugged. I'm fine. I lied. Some nights I jolted awake, certain I heard the baby crying. But there was only silence and the hum of the mini fridge. I'd roll over, stare at the ceiling, and hate myself for leaving him. But I told myself I'd be back for him, that I was biding my time, setting things up so I could eventually care for him on my own. I tried to bury myself in work, but my concentration was shot. All I could see when I closed my eyes was that neon-lit kiss in the parking lot. Lauren with her arms around him. The way she told me I was paranoid. The way she disregarded our child's first birthday. The shadow of that betrayal hovered over everything. I found myself wanting to lash out. Some days I fantasized about confronting him. The so-called Coach Ryan, in his gym, maybe in front of everyone. I pictured driving my fist into his smug face, hearing his nose crack. But would that fix anything? No. It would only get me a criminal record. And I sure as hell wouldn't help my custody case. So I swallowed the anger, let it fester inside. Then I got a text from her. It was short, almost casual. We need to talk about the house and child support. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I typed, no, then erased it. I typed again, I'll talk to your lawyer. Then erased that too. Finally, I wrote back, not ready to talk. My phone buzzed with an immediate reply. Don't be difficult. Be an adult. My pulse thundered. I clenched my jaw, typed nothing. She tried calling. I let it go to voicemail. The sound of her voice, sweet, manipulative, filled the phone speaker. Grow up, I'm done with your drama. She hung up. I let out a long breath. Drama. The hypocrisy was astounding. I started making quiet inquiries about a divorce lawyer. I had some savings. Lauren always insisted on controlling our finances, but I had a small account on the side from before the marriage, enough to start the process. I also reached out to a friend of mine who was married to a social worker. They gave me some advice about custody. It wasn't going to be simple. Courts often favor the mother unless I could prove neglect or wrongdoing. Infidelity alone might not matter, they said. The notion made me sick. She'd cheat and lie, but still, legally, she might be favored. But I refused to give up. My boy needed me. Weeks turned into over a month. Each day, I tested my self-control. I avoided Lauren's calls unless it was strictly about our son's schedule. My mood fluctuated between numb acceptance and flashes of bitterness. I found myself replaying the day we left Texas. We were so hopeful, excited about my new job, her marketing position, a future in a city that would challenge us both. She used to say, "We can conquer anything if we're together." It rang empty now. I felt like I was living in a ghostly realm of broken promises. At night, I'd dream about simpler times, our wedding under a blazing Texan sun, her laughter echoing as we ran across a field. Then I'd jolt awake, sweat-soaked, my heart pounding. The dream would dissolve into the memory of her entwined with that man, his hands on her waist. I'd press my palms to my eyes, trying to purge the images. They refused to leave. My coworkers invited me to a bar after hours. I went once. I thought drowning myself in whiskey might help. Instead, it made me belligerent. I nearly snapped at a guy who was flirting with a bartender. He reminded me too much of Ryan. Cocky, all charm, no conscience. I left before things got ugly. That was the last time I went out drinking. I was losing my grip, and I knew it. Then came the day she cornered me after my shift. I was heading to my truck in the company parking garage when I spotted her car. She was leaning against it, arms crossed, looking furious and gorgeous all at once. My gut clenched. I wanted to turn around and walk away, but I forced myself to face her. She marched up to me, voice tense. "We can't keep doing this. You ignore me, you won't answer my calls. We have a child, for God's sake." I paused, swallowing. "We do," I agreed. "But you're the one, whoa." She cut me off. Just because I found someone else doesn't mean you get to run away from your responsibilities. Her words stung like a whip. The nerve of her. I let out a slow breath, trying not to explode. I'm not running away from my responsibilities. I'm stepping away from you, I said, my tone low. And your games. She glared at me. There's no game. I was tired of feeling stuck with a husband who barely paid attention to me. So yes, I found what I needed somewhere else. That doesn't change the fact that I need child support. I need to figure out the house situation. And eventually you have to see your son. Don't pretend you're the victim here. My blood boiled, but I forced calm. I repeated the same line quietly. I saw you. Her cheeks flushed. Stop it. You think you're the first man whose wife wants a real man. Let's not pretend you're perfect, she hissed. Something inside me snapped. Don't talk to me about real men, I said, voice trembling. She actually laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Grow up, she said, then slid into her car and slammed the door. I stood there, fists clenched, watching her drive away. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my ears. Real men, huh? The taste of fury lingered on my tongue. That night, I made calls, lining up a meeting with a lawyer the following week. I was done letting her corner me on her terms. If she wanted a fight, I'd give it to her in court. But deep down, that idea of revenge, some grand act that would repay her for every ounce of pain, still festered. I was too old to get into brawls in a gym parking lot, but I wanted her to feel the sting of losing everything she took for granted. The house, the stable finances, the illusions, yet I remembered that revenge, in the end, might not fill the emptiness. My father used to say, revenge is more about what it does for you than what it does to them. It's your way out, not their punishment. I clung to that idea. Maybe revenge was a path to my own freedom. Another sleepless night turned into a cold dawn. I drove to the old neighborhood, parked a block away from our house. I sat there, engine off, gazing at the lights inside. She was probably home. The baby might have been with a sitter. I caught a glimpse of a silhouette near the window. Was that her? Or him? My stomach churned. I pictured them in my kitchen, my living room, maybe in my bed. The humiliation seared me, but my father's words echoed again. It's your way out, not their punishment. So I put the truck in reverse, left. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me squirm on the curb. It took me a few days of struggling, but I finally had a plan. I'd file for divorce, move out of state temporarily. My company had a branch in Indiana that offered me a spot, and line up the custody case from a distance. It would be complicated, but if I saved enough money, I could come back stronger, with a stable environment for my son. I didn't want to tear him from his mother, but if she was too wrapped up in her fling to care for him properly, maybe the court would see reason. The next confrontation came unexpectedly. She showed up at my apartment, this dingy place with peeling wallpaper and a flickering overhead light. I guess she got the address from a friend. She pounded on the door. I opened it warily. She barged in before I could say a word, scanning the bare room with a sneer. "So this is where you've been hiding," she said. I stayed silent, crossing my arms. "Why are you here?" I finally asked. She shrugged. "I need you to sign some papers for the mortgage. I also thought you might want to see your son." My heart clenched. "Is he here?" I asked, hope stirring in my chest. She shook her head. "In the car. Asleep." I brushed past her, opened the door. There he was, strapped in the back seat, dozing. My boy. My eyes welled up, not with tears, but with a fierce longing. I reached in, carefully unbuckled him, and lifted him into my arms. He stirred, blinking at me. For a second, he seemed not to recognize who I was. That cut deeper than any betrayal. Then he reached out with chubby fingers and latched onto my collar. I carried him inside, ignoring Lauren's presence. My son felt heavier, as if he'd grown in the short time I'd been away. He smelled like baby powder and faint baby shampoo. I kissed his soft hair. He made a small cooing sound. I felt my chest tighten with love and regret. She stood there with the papers in hand, tapping her foot. You going to sign these or what? I looked at her, my son in my arms, and something in me nearly snapped. The moment was so wrong, her tone so cold, yet here I was holding the very life we created together. Give me a second, I muttered. I sat down at my makeshift table, my baby squirming on my lap, and skimmed the documents. They were about refinancing the mortgage, something about switching both our names to her name alone. My eyes flicked to hers, suspicious. Why do you need me to do this now? She shrugged. Ryan thinks it's best. We can't keep a house in both our names if we're not together. Plus, you walked out. The house is mine now. Ryan thinks it's best. The words ignited a flash of anger. So that bastard was acting like the new man of the house. I thought about refusing, about fighting it. But my lawyer had told me I'd probably lose the house anyway if I was the one who left, and if she could afford it. With child support, that might be enough. And the truth is, I didn't want that house anymore. It felt tainted, filled with memories that hurt. If it meant they'd both stay there, let them have it. My revenge wasn't about the house. I pressed the pen to the paper and signed. I could feel her eyes on me, triumphant. My hand didn't shake. I set the pen down. She nodded, sliding the papers into a folder. Thanks, she said, half mocking, half relieved. My son wiggled, wanting to climb down. I let him stand on the floor. He gripped my leg, looking up at me with those big eyes. My heart twisted. I said quietly, "Let me keep him here tonight." I glanced up at her. She frowned, shaking her head. "No. I only brought him so you could see him. We're leaving." I bristled. "He's my son too, you know. I have every right." She raised an eyebrow. "I don't trust you with him right now. You're unstable. Look at this place." She gestured around the shabby apartment. "You can't even take care of yourself, let alone a baby." My jaw clenched. I wanted to shout, but the baby started to fuss, sensing the tension. I picked him up again, tried to calm him. She reached out, her arms extended. "Hand him over." I resisted for a second, then realized if I fought, it would only upset him more. Slowly, I let her take him. He whimpered, eyes darting between us. She turned away, a smirk tugging at her lips. "You'll see him again, once you get your act together," she said. "Maybe by then you'll have learned to handle reality." With that, she walked out. I stood at the doorway, mind spinning, as she strapped him back in the car seat, and drove off. The urge to chase after them almost overwhelmed me, but I stayed rooted in place. My fists tightened. I felt the hollow pit inside me yawn wider. I went back in, sank into my folding chair, stared at the spot where he'd stood. I almost couldn't breathe. Then I noticed something on the table. A slip of paper, an afterthought. Divorce forms. She'd left them blank for me to fill out, as though it were a courtesy. My eyes blurred. I couldn't see the text clearly for a moment. When my vision settled, I noticed one line she'd highlighted. Irreconcilable differences. That was how it would be stated. How neat, how tidy. Like you could sum up heartbreak and betrayal in 2 words. I felt an inhuman scream build in my chest. But I didn't scream. Instead, I let out a ragged breath. My father's words circled back in my mind. Revenge is your way out, not their punishment. I might not get the house. I might not get the wife. Frankly, I didn't want her anymore. But I would get my freedom, and I'd fight for my son's well-being. That was the only revenge that mattered. I'd break free from her lies, from the suffocating sense that I had to hold our family together. She ruined it. Now, I'd set myself free. That very night, I wrote a final note in my battered notebook. "I release you, Lauren. Enjoy your life with Coach Ryan. This is my liberation." Then I tore it out, folded it, and tucked it in my pocket. I wouldn't mail it to her, but I needed those words as a reminder. something to cling to if I ever weakened. The next day, I made the calls I'd been dreading. I set up an appointment with the divorce lawyer for the end of the week. I also asked my boss about the transfer out of state. He said it was still open. I accepted. My plan was to file the divorce, push for visitation rights, and once that was in motion, relocate for a while to get my head straight, earn more money, and come back stronger. It was a risk, but anything was better than rotting in that dingy apartment, with memories suffocating me. That weekend, I drove to the outskirts of the city, finding a secluded spot near a river. The water rushed by, gray and cold in the autumn chill. I sat on a rock, listening to the current, feeling the crisp breeze. I let the images of her and Ryan roll through my mind. Her laughing, his arm around her. The swirl of hate churned in my gut. Slowly, I exhaled, imagining the swirl dissolving into the water. I didn't want to carry that poison with me for the rest of my life. My revenge would be to thrive, to move beyond them. Maiming him or humiliating her in public might have satisfied me for a moment, but it would end up destroying me more. I needed to be free, truly free. That's what I told myself as I watched the river swirl around rocks, carrying debris downstream. The day before my lawyer's appointment, she called me. The moment I saw her name on the screen, I considered ignoring it. Something made me answer. She said, "We need to meet." Her tone was urgent. My stomach tightened. "What for?" I asked. "Ryan found a better place for us," she said. "We're selling the house. You need to sign the final documents." The house, the last tie. I inhaled. "Fine. Where do you want to meet?" She suggested a diner near the old gym. The irony wasn't lost on me. I arrived early, took a booth in the corner. The place smelled of cheap coffee and bacon grease. Rain hammered on the roof again, a relentless October downpour. I drummed my fingers on the table, scanning the passers-by. After a few minutes, I spotted her stepping in, shaking an umbrella. She wore a fitted coat, hairstyled, as if she was heading somewhere important after this. She approached, slid into the seat across from me. She didn't greet me, just a nod, polite as a stranger. She put the papers on the table, smoothed them out. I eyed them. "What's this?" She sighed. "Purchase agreement. The buyer wants a quick closing." She pointed to a line. "Sign here. I'll handle the rest." For a second, I hesitated. This was our house. The place we brought our baby home from the hospital. The place we laughed and argued and dreamed. But that house was gone in spirit the moment she betrayed me. I picked up the pen and scribbled my name. My signature felt shaky. She took the papers back, eyes flicking over them. "Thank you." Silence settled. A waitress came by, asked if we wanted anything. Lauren just ordered coffee. I said the same. When the waitress left, Lauren cleared her throat. "Ryan wants to move," she said. "Out of state, eventually. He's got connections at some gyms in Florida." I nodded, heart turning to ice. "So you'll leave Cleveland?" I asked, dreading the answer. If she took my son to Florida, that complicated everything. "Maybe," she said. "Haven't decided. Depends on him." I forced myself to stay calm. "My son is not moving without me," I said. She shrugged. "We'll see what the court says. He belongs with me." I clenched my jaw, repeating quietly, "I'll fight you." She smirked, stirring sugar into her coffee. "You do that. Just remember, the court looks at stability. You're living in a dump." The words stung, but I didn't flinch. Instead, I repeated the same phrase. "I saw you." She froze, spoon midair. "Shut up," she snapped. I stared at her, letting the moment stretch. "I saw you," I murmured again, voice controlled. Her eyes flicked away. For the first time, I sensed a flicker of guilt. The waitress came back, placed 2 mugs of coffee on the table. Lauren paid for both. She didn't speak again until we were alone. She exhaled, setting the spoon down with a click. "I won't apologize," she said. "You weren't the man I needed. You got so wrapped up in your own head, you forgot about me. Her gaze wavered, maybe from shame, maybe from frustration. I was lonely, she said. Ryan gave me something you couldn't. My chest tightened. I took a sip of coffee, the bitterness flooding my mouth. He gave you betrayal. That's all I see. She stiffened, then shrugged. Well, it's done now. I watched her gather the papers. There was no regret in her expression, only a quiet hardness. Maybe she wanted me to snap. Maybe she expected me to beg. I was finished with begging. One day, I said evenly, you'll look for me, and I won't be there. And that's on you. She let out a short laugh. I doubt it. Then she slid out of the booth, adjusted her coat. I tossed some bills on the table to cover a tip, ignoring her attempt to pay. She paused, glancing back. You'll talk to me when you're ready to be reasonable. Then she turned and walked out. I sat there, feeling the heat of anger simmer. The rain hammered the diner windows, a relentless backdrop. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. Stay out of her way, man. Focus on your own life. It ended with, Ryan. A surge of rage jolted through me. I stared at the phone, considering 100 vile replies. Then I laughed quietly, shaking my head. I typed back. I planned to. Then I blocked the number. That same evening, I went home, poured myself a glass of whiskey, and sat in the near darkness. I took slow sips, letting the burn remind me I was still alive. My father's words circled again. Revenge is your way out. I realized my best revenge was living well, free from their games. I'd file for visitation or joint custody, ensure my son's well-being, and beyond that, I'd walk away from the toxic spiral they created. If she dragged me through the mud, so be it. I was done letting her define me. The next morning, I woke early. The rain had stopped. Sunlight streamed through the faded curtains. I grabbed my phone, noticing a missed call from my lawyer. I called back immediately, hammered out the details. We decided we'd file on grounds of irreconcilable differences. I'd request visitation and a path to joint custody. It'd be a battle, but I felt ready. The emptiness inside me was still there, but it felt more like a blank canvas now, not a tomb. I could rebuild on it. That afternoon, I drove to the house for the last time. The real estate sign was already up. She wasn't there. Maybe she was with him. I peered into the window. Nothing remained except a few boxes. Then I glanced up at the second floor, at the corner where my son's room was. The curtains were gone, the crib presumably dismantled. A memory stabbed me. The day I carried him in from the hospital, how we marveled at his tiny fingers. A lump formed in my throat. I pressed a hand against the glass. I'll come back for you, I whispered, though he wasn't there. I promise. I got into my truck and left. I've never been good at goodbyes, but that one felt final. The next day, I filed the divorce papers. I signed them with a hand that only shook a little. My lawyer told me it would take months for everything to process, but that I should start planning for the hearing. He asked if I had evidence of her affair. I said yes, I saw it firsthand. He shrugged. Unfortunately, that might not affect custody. But let's see. I nodded. I'd do whatever it took. A week later, I packed up the meager belongings in my apartment, loaded them into my truck, and hit the road for Indiana. The sky was clear, the road open. As miles rolled by, I felt the tension in my chest ease. I rolled down the window, letting the wind whip my hair. I kept seeing flashbacks. Lauren laughing, then Lauren kissing Ryan, then my son's chubby cheeks. But each time, I clutched the wheel tighter, forging ahead. My father once told me, sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is keep driving forward. He wasn't a poet, but he was right. That day, I drove until sunset, determined to outrun the ghost of her betrayal. Indiana wasn't glamorous. It was a small branch office, dull farmland, nights quiet as a tomb. But it was good work and decent pay. I found a studio apartment near the office, sparse, but functional. I started focusing on improving myself, waking early, jogging, hitting a tiny local gym. Each day, I spent an hour on the phone with the lawyer or reviewing legal documents. She tried to call me sometimes, but I let it ring. If it was about the baby, I told her to text me. I saw pictures she posted online, her new life with Ryan, his thick arms around her waist. My stomach twisted, but I no longer felt that stabbing agony, more like a dull bruise, still tender. Every so often, I'd go to bed and have nightmares of them mocking me, of my boy crying for me in an empty room. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, forcing myself to breathe. Then I'd recall my vow. Revenge is letting go. Eventually, I started to feel stronger. Months passed. The court date loomed. I drove back to Ohio for the hearing. She and Ryan showed up together, though he couldn't come into the mediation room. She looked poised, a little smug. My lawyer presented my request for partial custody and structured visitation. Her lawyer argued that I was unfit, that I abandoned them, and that I lived out of state. She sat there, arms crossed, avoiding my gaze. It was a messy session. In the end, the judge ruled for a temporary custody agreement, giving me visitation every other weekend if I could come to Ohio. I felt disappointed. I wanted more. But it was a start. I said I'd comply. She marched out of the courthouse, and I followed. Ryan stood in the hall, arms folded. He threw me a glance that brimmed with superiority. I ignored him, addressing her. "I'm picking him up next weekend, right?" She didn't meet my eyes. "Fine," she muttered, flipping her hair. Ryan slipped his arm around her shoulder. My chest tightened with revulsion, but I forced myself to walk away. This was the new normal. Hostility, forced negotiations, and that man in the background. I visited my son that weekend, took him to a local park. He was bigger, more active. He babbled words I barely recognized. I swung him around, making him giggle. My heart soared. For a few hours, I forgot the bitterness, focusing on him. When I dropped him off at the house, Ryan answered the door. I nearly turned on my heel, but forced myself to stand firm. He smirked. "She's not here, but I'll take the kid." My hands clenched. I hesitated, looking at my son. He stared up at me, eyes curious. "Daddy loves you," I whispered. Then I handed him over. Ryan disappeared inside, shutting the door. I stood there, the cold wind whipping my jacket. It felt like a punch in the gut, but I refused to break. I got back in my truck and drove away. Over the next 6 months, that was my life. Commuting every other weekend, grabbing a hotel in Cleveland, spending precious hours with my boy. She tried to reduce my time, claiming my job out of state made me unreliable. My lawyer fought back. Slowly, we edged toward a compromise. All the while, I built a new routine in Indiana. I saved money. I improved my standing at work. I started planning for a better apartment. My anger toward her and Ryan burned low, like embers of a dying fire. I realized my real priority was forging a stable path for my son, not fueling that resentment. Then, one day, I received a frantic call from her mother. I almost didn't answer, but something nudged me. Her mother's voice trembled. "Lauren's in the hospital. She had an accident." My heart flipped. Despite everything, concern stabbed me. I drove all night to get to Cleveland. When I arrived, her mother was in the waiting area, tearful. She explained that Lauren crashed her car on the way home from some late-night get-together with Ryan. My son was with a babysitter, thank God. Lauren suffered injuries, broken ribs, a head wound, but would recover. Ryan was nowhere to be found. Apparently, he'd left her alone at the party after a fight. The swirling emotions blindsided me. I felt pity, worry, even guilt. This was the woman I once loved, the mother of my child. But I also felt a grim sense of justice. Ryan had shown his true colors, ditching her. In that moment, I realized how much things had changed. I wasn't there to gloat or to cast blame. I was there for my son, to ensure he still had a stable future. So I took him from the babysitter, spent the night on her mother's couch. The next day, I visited Lauren in the hospital. She looked fragile, tubes in her arm. She turned her head away when she saw me. I stood by the bed, our son perched on my hip. He reached out, calling softly, "Mama." Lauren's eyes filled with tears. She tried to smile for him. I swallowed. This was never how I imagined us. I said, "I'll look after him until you're well." She nodded, eyes averted. "Thank you," she whispered. I nodded back quietly. There was no sense in pouring out the old wounds. After a few minutes, I left. Ryan never showed up during my visit. In the weeks that followed, I had my son full-time. The hospital stay lengthened. Her injuries were more serious than initially thought. She needed therapy sessions for her leg. Ryan apparently vanished. I never asked for details. I heard rumors that he moved on to a new gym in Florida, chasing some big contract. The irony didn't surprise me. Lauren's mother called me daily, sometimes in tears, sometimes in relief. I tried to keep things civil for the sake of my boy. One day, as I was bathing him in the guest bathroom of my new, better apartment, he splashed water everywhere. He was 2 by then, squealing with laughter at the sight of soap bubbles. I realized that for the first time in months, I was laughing too, a genuine laugh from deep in my chest. That's when I felt it, a lift in my spirit. The hatred, the anger, the craving for revenge. It had melted into something else. Acceptance, a focus on what truly mattered. My father's words rang true. Revenge is about your own liberation. I was free. Free from her manipulations, free from the illusions of the past. My son was in my arms, happy and innocent. The day Lauren finally got out of the hospital, she contacted me. Her voice sounded subdued, as if the accident had jolted her into reflection. She said, "We need to talk." So I drove to see her. She was staying at her mother's place, walking with a cane. Her eyes looked hollow, her makeup gone. I could sense she was humbled in a way I never thought possible. She asked quietly if she could see our boy. I agreed. He ran to her, a bit hesitant, but recognized his mother's scent. She held him, tears slipping down her cheeks. It was the first time I'd seen her genuinely cry. I stood awkwardly, not sure what to feel. After a while, she turned to me. "Ryan left," she said, voice trembling. "He never even visited me." I was so stupid. I didn't reply. She swallowed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. My chest tightened, but I found no words. She tried again. "I'm sorry for everything. You didn't deserve that." I nodded, slow and deliberate. I believed it was all she could say. Maybe she meant it. Maybe she was just lost and lonely. But it didn't matter. I felt no satisfaction in her apology, only a mild release, like a final note in a sad song that told me it was time to go. I took my son's hand. He looked up at me, then at Lauren. She kissed his forehead. "Take care of him," she said, her voice laced with regret. I gently nodded. Then I guided him out the door, leaving her behind with her mother. Out on the porch, the sunlight was warm, the sky bright. For the first time, I could breathe without feeling that crushing weight on my chest. Over the next few months, we arranged a stable custody agreement. She admitted she couldn't manage full-time care alone yet, not with her injuries and the financial strain. So I took primary custody. She got visits on weekends, supervised at first, then gradually unsupervised once she recovered. It wasn't easy, but we managed a fragile truce. Some nights, I'd still recall the images of her with Ryan and feel a pang of betrayal. But each time, I reminded myself I was free now. That was the real victory. Time did its slow work. My son got older, started preschool. I moved into a better place, near a small park. My job improved. I realized that I was living the life I once thought she and I would live together. Only now, it was just me and the boy. And though it ached sometimes, It felt cleaner, more honest than anything we had in that last year of marriage. One evening after I tucked him in, I sat alone at my kitchen table. I sipped a beer, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator. I thought back to the day I pressed my palm against that mirror, the day I saw a stranger's face screaming silently. I realized I didn't feel that despair anymore. Instead, I felt a calm acceptance. I'm not the man I was before her betrayal. I carry scars, doubts, but also a certain strength. I learned how to rebuild from the rubble she left. Mending doesn't always come with fireworks or dramatic gestures. Sometimes it's a steady, patient process. A daily practice of letting go of bitterness, focusing on what matters. I stepped outside onto the small balcony. The sky was clear, the stars faint behind city lights. I breathed in the crisp air, exhaling slowly. In the distance, I heard a neighbor's dog barking, cars passing. But inside me, there was a stillness, a quiet sense of resolution. I closed my eyes. She destroyed us, and I rebuilt myself. That's the simplest truth. Tonight, as I stand here, I'm reminded of that final line I wrote in my letter. If you're reading this, I'm gone. The man you knew is gone too. And it's true. The old me, who clung to illusions, died in that parking lot when I saw them kissing. In his place stands a man who understands that sometimes the greatest act of revenge is to walk away free, to find your own worth, and refuse to let another's betrayal define you. Maybe that's all any of us can do in the end. I let out a slow breath, opened my eyes, and glanced back at the soft glow from my son's bedroom nightlight. He's sleeping peacefully, unburdened by adult failings. A gentle warmth spreads through my chest. Yes, I lost the marriage, lost the house, lost what I thought was my future. But I found a new path, forged from heartbreak and resilience. And in this moment I realize I'm smiling. Not at a mirror, not at some forced illusion. I'm smiling at the life I've carved out of the wreckage. And that's all the satisfaction I need.